All right. Welcome back to the Psychological Paradigm Shift. I'm Ed Rieger, your host. I hope you found last week's episode informational and helpful. Always remember, I am only providing my personal opinions based on my experiences and education on psychological topics. We will be talking about mental illness in a very blunt, transparent manner. The topics may be disturbing to some, and it will never be my intent to hurt anyone, only to share my ideas and thoughts. Tonight, we're going to cover foster care and adoption and the questions you may need to ask your potential romantic partners. Before we do, let's kind of do a recap on where we are right now in the psychological paradigm shift movement. And one thing I want to cover real quick before we do the recap is one of my sisters pointed out that on every podcast, I'm wearing the same shirt on four podcasts at a time. And she told me I should change my shirt. Well, the reason why you may see the same shirt 4 times is because I tape in one day, and I'll tape 4 episodes, and I don't come back and tape. I do it all at one time. So that's why you see the same shirt for 4 episodes. It's not that I don't do laundry. I do, but I just don't see a reason to keep changing the shirt after each segment. So that's why she thought I was creating a problem for myself, but who knows? I think it's okay. Hopefully you will too. Okay, so we have 2 main resources to track the information that I've been providing. One of the resources is the website, psychologicalparadigmshift.com. And then there's YouTube and the radio listeners on Apple, Spotify, and the international channels that can be found on the Psychological Paradigm Shift website. The purpose of the movement is to make people aware of the size and scope of mental illness, how mental illness affects them personally, socially, economically, spiritually, politically, and in so many other ways. The movement was created to change the paradigm of mental illness permanently. The movement is for anyone who may be suffering from psychological disorders currently. Hopefully, the information I'm sharing will help many people come out of the fog of mental illness. The movement is for the mentally healthy, to educate them on the psychological disorders they face when they are communicating and becoming involved with the mentally ill. It's also for psychiatric and psychological professionals who may be able to take my information and expand on it to assist all of us in evolving further. It is for the politicians and other leaders, religious and societal, to see the size of mental illness and the cost and the solutions to combat it differently that I'm going to provide in my website, in my books, in the podcast, in my political office I'll run for. And finally, and this is going to be very important, I think, especially as we go forward, the journalists out there, all the print journalists, social media journalists, television production journalists, they've got to evolve themselves to be able to cover this topic in a thorough manner, so they can be part of the front line of educating Americans and citizens worldwide. This will become even more critical as I launch my political aspirations, that journalists should have listened to the podcast, hopefully, read my books, and become much more educated as to what they're looking at when they're dealing with leaders and how to communicate with them differently. So, and I know we've started to cover the questions, and for some, it may be opening some very old and painful wounds. But for me personally, I didn't know any other way to heal myself but to open those wounds up, analyze them, uh, accept them as part of my psychological makeup, and create a new path for myself, a new paradigm of who I wanted to be, who I am today. I believe that's the real purpose of this psychological paradigm shift, is to help people evolve past the mental illness they may have grown up in or that they may have currently. Because communications between humans is the number one activity we do between each other. And we must incorporate psychological knowledge in these communications to better understand each other's motivations and behaviors, or we're never going to heal and we're definitely never going to evolve. So that's the purpose and of all of this, and hopefully it's helpful to people. So, all right, let's get started. We're going to cover in tonight's episode foster care and adoption, and go through some of the questions that you'll definitely want to ask folks as you're dating them if they have lived in these kind of environments and grew up in these kind of situations. Right now, there's about 400,000 children in the United States living in foster care currently. Now, that's right now in America in the 21st century in 2025. 400,000 children living in foster care in the United States. Their family foundations have been destroyed, either by drugs, alcohol, crime, abuse, or 1,000 other reasons. But one fact is certain: they were most likely born to the mentally ill. And for them, their struggles are just beginning. And it will most likely take them a lifetime to rebuild their foundations, if they ever do. The Prison Policy Initiative, Prisoners Bureau of Justice Statistics, in 2008 said 52% of state prisoners and 63% of federal prisoners have children. So think about that for a second. That's millions of people in our justice system incarcerated who have children. So when they become incarcerated, their children now get given to other family members, grandparents, go into the foster care system, are adopted out. But the parents can no longer take care of them if they're in the system. They'll lose their children to drug charges, child abuse, and there's a long list of legal infractions that mandate incarceration that they'll lose their children to. Reports estimate that the cost for child protective services in the United States and child safety nets, such as foster care and child welfare services, they're estimated to cost annually about $9 billion. So there's a lot of money being spent on taking care of children of the mentally ill who can't take care of their children currently. Growing up, I should have entered the foster care system many, many times. Even today, I still can't believe that I was never put in the system. If anybody would have checked on me for 5 minutes, I would have been in the system. When you're asking these questions, you're going to be digging up some very painful and traumatic issues for your potential partner that you're trying to date. Not only could the person you are trying to create a relationship with may have been abused by a parent or guardian before landing in foster care, but once there, they may have experienced more abuse from foster care givers and other children in the system that they were exposed to. And those traumas may have been even worse than what the parents had done to them. There may be multiple traumas and many open wounds that you are still dealing with and that you will deal with if you create a permanent relationship with them. Or they may have accepted some of the traumas that they've experienced and started to receive help for them. That's hopeful. Depending on the age of the person you're trying to date, if they're in their teen years or young adults or adults, it may make a world of difference in their ability to share and open up their history, especially if they're still in the foster care system currently. So when you're dating younger in your teens and young adulthood, it's critical to ask these questions I'm going to show you here in a minute, because they may be fresh out of the foster care system or fresh out of the adoption system, and they may still be in it. So you may have psychological issues you're dealing with that are very, very fresh to them, that they've never been able to get healed from. And so this may be an extremely delicate time for them, but also an extremely dangerous time for you, because you may not know what you're looking at when you go to date these age brackets. As you age and you get more mature, you may see things a little bit differently. But I think when you're younger, not being able to ask these kind of questions could really get you in some serious issues. All right, let's get started. Here's some of the questions that you want to ask everybody that you would date, because you never know who has been in the foster care system or been adopted out. So you have no idea. So you might as well ask them, and hopefully it will start a conversation that you can work through. Were you ever put into foster care? At what age were you put in? How long did you stay in foster care? What was the reason the state put you into foster care? Did your parent pass away? Was it because of drugs or alcohol? Was it sexual or physical abuse? It's important to know these reasonings, definitely. So I would definitely make sure how that you know this and before you move forward. Here's a really important question. Did you age out while in foster care? What that means is when somebody turns 18 and the system itself, the government, foster care system, and so forth, don't consider you a child anymore. They consider you an adult. So they don't think they're responsible for you in any way, shape, or form. So it's time for you to go. And this can be for children in the system. This can be a real shock to their psychological well-being. They may be extremely impoverished, and they have no family support, and they may be completely alone. So when you age out, that's a very, very dangerous time for people, because they may have reached an age of 18. But are they really psychologically mature enough to take care of themselves? Most likely not. And the statistics show that things are not going to be good for those folks most of the time. So we'll talk about that as we go. here's a big issue for a lot of aged out kids that you want to ask is, once you aged out, did you become homeless? Um, uh, Many foster care children, adopted children, may become homeless when they age out because they have no money, no family support, no social nets. You're 18, hit the streets. Wish you the best. Hope you make it. Goodbye. Well, that's a devastating timeline for them, and so a lot of them will become homeless within either immediately or within a short period of time because they just don't have the financial well-being to take care of themselves. And today, uh, uh, we would rather give tax breaks to billionaires than to help support these individuals. So, were any of your siblings put into foster care? Uh, it depends on how many siblings you had in your family. Um, so, if you had 5, 7, 10, then they all went into foster care most likely with you. So, were you able to stay with your siblings in the same family? That is probably going to be very important to them and to their psychological well being to know that they were staying with their siblings. And it made a world of difference for them in how they were able to take care of each other while in the process. Did your foster care or adopted families treat you well? Okay. Were any of them ever abusive to you? So, unfortunately, the stories are out there that uh, some foster care and adopted children don't do well because the families they got adopted to were extremely abusive to them, and multiple families that they were transferred to, and multiple abuses and so forth. So, that's an important question to ask them. If they abused you, what kind of abuse was it? Now, remember, they've never probably spoken to another person as to the abuses they experienced, especially if they're younger, uh, and especially if they're still living in the situation. They may not feel comfortable saying anything to jeopardize what's going on, and hoping that things get better. Or so there's 1,000 reasons why they won't say anything to anybody. But it's important for you to try to ask this question, and hopefully you get the answers you need. Now, this may be the beginning. Once you ask this question, this may actually be the beginning of them starting to think seriously about what's happened to them. And maybe now they can start to self-heal or receive therapy. So it could be a very important question as you're communicating with them. But also remember, too, that when they age out of foster care or adoption, they don't have financial resources like other people. So them receiving care is most likely not going to happen. So that's something you have to accept and be aware of also. Were you ever adopted? So some kids may go to the foster care system, then get adopted to one of the foster care families, and so you never know. My mother had 9 children, and 4 were adopted out. A couple of them went to foster care, and a couple were adopted. So it's something that in our family is a reality. So, at what age were you adopted? And did the family you got adopted to treat you well? Again, no one knows what that adopted family may have done to the individuals. So you have to ask them, were you abused by your adopted family? And if they did abuse you, what kind of abuse was it? Um, you need to start to really help them begin the ability to communicate about this with you and themselves and others. This can help them to start communicating out loud the things that have occurred. Do you still associate with foster care or adopted family? This is going to give you a picture of how well they really were treated. If they did receive abuse, they most likely don't want anything to do with the foster care or adopted families ever again. So you need to ask, how often do you socialize with them? What kinds of things do you do with them? And here's a big one. Did you have any foster care or adoptive siblings? And you want to ask them, do you ever socialize with them? And this can tell you very quickly if their relationship is non existent. If so, there was most likely abuse between the siblings. And maybe no one ever knew about it or know about it currently. So, how often do you socialize with your siblings? What kind of things do you do with them socially? If you and your natural born siblings were put into foster care or adopted out and separated, have you ever reconnected with them? This question can be extremely complicated. If these siblings were never reunited, they most likely have experienced many traumas separately and will bring those wounds to these current relationships. Some of the siblings may be fog lifters and some may be chaos chasers. Some will try and create relationships, some may not. I have one sister that I never reconnected with, and she passed away before I could. There's not much you can do to resolve any childhood issues when you can't reconnect with adopted or foster care siblings. So it's a big issue. What age were you when you reconnected with your siblings? In our family, we're in our 30s. Very, very late, actually. So missed a lot of years together. Missed a lot of joyful moments. So how's your relationship now? Some siblings may have relationships, some may not. And some work on it constantly to try to make it better. Do you ever talk with them or see them? What kind of social activities do you participate in with them? Unfortunately, because of timing, when you reunite with your siblings, you may all live in different cities, making activities very difficult to pursue. So you may not have much connections going on there. That's why this kind of childhood abuse goes until you die, because you lose so many connections and experiences that you should have lived, and you can't turn the clock back. Do your siblings have children? Unfortunately, because of your childhood and young adult disconnection, you probably have never met nephews and nieces, and you will have you won't have any kind of relationship with them. Our family connection is non-existent and lost forever. Have you ever met those family members? Have you ever socialized with them? Are you able to communicate with your siblings about the separation? This is very difficult because of the anger, pain, trauma, or traumas. Some siblings will never communicate to each other about any of this. Some may. You can guarantee that chaos chasers will never have a conversation about this topic. Fog lifters will try to communicate with their siblings, even though it will be very hard and extremely complicated. Did you ever receive treatment for the issues associated with separations from your siblings? They may have received therapy for their issues individually, uh, but I can guarantee they probably have never been able to get help as a family. That ship sailed years ago, and it's never coming to shore again. Their relationships as siblings and families were destroyed a long time ago, and it's virtually impossible to have it reconstructed. When you're trying to date or marry someone who has experienced foster care or adoption, you must be aware of the complexities of these experiences and traumas. As you're going to create a bond with them, you must be very careful. Introducing them to your friends and families will be risky, especially if they've never addressed the traumas they experienced. Having children may be difficult, even if they've self-analyzed or received psychiatric help. And if they haven't, that is extremely dangerous territory for you as you're trying to create a relationship. Okay, so let's stop there. In next week's episode, we're going to talk about psychiatric treatment. Thank you for sharing time with me tonight. I hope this information was helpful. As we progress through the psychological paradigm shift, remember you can go to the website psychologicalparadigmshift.com. I'll post any updates when I have them, and you can sign up to receive future information. And I look forward to next week's episode. Take care of yourselves.